and everybody here is worthy of being here, and you're worthy of love. And we're about to have the best weekend that any of us have ever had. Are you ready for that? Woo!
Mid-South is one of my absolute favorite gravel events. I've done it in the dry, I've done it in the sopping mud. I did it in the 2020 year when the tidal wave of COVID was crashing down upon us. And I highly recommend this event to just about anyone. This weekend, I'm testing the Ventum GS1. It's been refined recently. I did a video on that. You can go back and refer to the geometry tweaks. You can change the trail of the bike to affect the handling. I'm also testing the new SRAM Force, popped on power meter. I want to talk about that. I changed the tires at the last minute. When I was coming out here, I was looking at the forecast. It was calling for rain and mud, so I went with a skinnier, slicker tire. It's now beautiful, dry, fast. I should have left on the stock IRC 42 double cross, but I'm gonna run what I brung. So in this video, I want to tell you about why I love Mid-South, why others love Mid-South. I want to talk about the gear, and I want to talk about my recommendations for what you should do when you come out here yourself. Diversity and variety is the spice of life, right? And Mid-South is quite spicy. Many gravel events have a very specific flavor. You know, I was just at BWR Arizona, which kind of skews toward the BWR California of, you know, road racy, you know, lots of lycra, lots of fast, aggressive racing, which I think is a hoot. That's not necessarily for everyone. Here at Mid-South, the sharp end of the race, mighty sharp. There's certainly no lack of competition on the women's side or the men's side, but then the field is, a lot of the field wouldn't describe themselves as a racing field. They're just here to have a great time. We've seen, you know, fat bikes, we've seen skinny tired fixed gears, tandems, and anything and just about everything in between. And that is, I think, the secret sauce behind what makes Mid-South special. The cook in the kitchen, of course, is Bobby Wintle, a man who hugs each and every finisher. This is not a gimmick. This is what the guy has been doing since, you know, before Mid-South was the Mid-South. It used to be called Land Run. You can look into the reasons behind that name change. They certainly came from a place of good heart for Bobby. His spirit drives this event like no other. There's a running event the day before, you know, here on Friday. People out there doing the 50K on these beautiful clay roads. Some folks who are maybe not quite right in the head do the double. They'll do a 50K on Friday, then do the 100-mile bike race on Saturday. Bobby's out there all the while hugging every single finisher across the line on Friday, and then is out there from before the sun comes up on Saturday until well after the sun has gone down, until the absolute last finisher comes across the finish line and gets that big old Bobby hug in downtown Stillwater, Oklahoma. I've got notes because I'm a reporter and that's what I do. Also, I'm kind of cracked, and if I don't write it down, I'm gonna forget bits. Brahms mint chocolate chip sundae. Good for that glycogen window recovery. First off, before we get into the bike bits and the race bits and the gear bits, shout out to the volunteers that make the Mid-South happen. Shout out to the volunteers that make bike races around the world happen. These are complicated events that involve a lot of folks, many of them working for free. So thank you very much for letting us play while you do the work. Bobby Wintle is the man who makes this happen. He's the owner of District Bicycle.
Let's fucking go. Merry Christmas.
And he is the self-described Minister of Stoke, Director of Stoke of the Mid-South, and he was in fine form all weekend like a preacher at a Southern big tent revival.
Eyes to the sky, never glued to your shoes. This is our moment to be alive. This is our moment to truly live.
Screaming, yelling, hugging from Thursday through late tonight. Speaking of Thursday, let's start this thing at the start when Mid-South kicks off. Shakeout rides are a thing at gravel races. If you've done an event, you've probably done a shakeout ride. If you haven't done Mid-South, you've never done one like this. Ripton, the stretchy denim company, and Salsa hosted the first one on Thursday. There must have been 200-300 people out there, not wearing this type of stretchy pants, but out on all sorts of bicycles, doing a casual ride. Imagine that, having fun on a bicycle.
Where in the world are we? What is going on?
I don't know. We're on a denim ride in Stillwater, Oklahoma. The start of Mid-South.
There's like 300 people out here.
Yeah.
This is awesome.
Because it's a big community. Everyone loves denim. I mean, we're not in Canada, but we're all in denim tuxedos.
You know, lots of gravel events have their own flavor based on the region and largely on the promoter who puts the thing on. Mid-South has its own special flavor that a wide variety of folks find very inviting. I think it's a fantastic model that I'd love to see elsewhere, of telling people like, whoever you are, whatever you ride, you are welcome here, come join the fun. There are plenty of other official, listed and unofficial shakeout rides. I jumped in with the Trek crew, saw Keel Ryan going past and Ruth Winder and Amity Rockwell and folks, so I jumped on in with them, did a quick interview with Paige as we rolled along, and there's all sorts of rides like this going on, so people will come out a few days ahead, and like the race, I don't want to say it's an afterthought, the race is an awesome anchor of the weekend, but it's not the only thing of the weekend, and it's such a night and day difference from your garden variety road racing or crit racing, where people will show up, you get out of your car, maybe you talk to your teammates, maybe you don't talk to anybody, you do the event and then you go home. Like here you come and you hang out for the weekend, meet new folks, see old friends, it's good stuff.
What do you love or loathe about the Mid-South?
I love the vibes and also Bobby's hugs at the end.
The red clay,
Yeah.
it's just like, I don't know, something motivated, and the vibes. Really good vibes here.
Man, I love the mud, you know, but we're gonna miss out this year. Like, we're not even getting the true Mid-South experience this year. I'm disappointed.
What do you love or loathe about the Mid-South?
I think I love that it was my first gravel race ever, really, last year. And so it's fun to come back because I think my feelings this year are totally different than my feelings last year.
Yes.
I don't like running with my bike.
Bike racing's always a gamble. That's part of the fun, right? And gravel particularly so. With the Mid-South, when you sign up, you don't know what you're in for in terms of the weather. I didn't know what I was in for just a few days out. I switched over the tires from a 42 IRC Boken double cross to a 35 Schwalbe G1 RS, a tire I love because I thought it was going to be muddy and I wanted a skinnier tire. The forecast changed. It was a beautiful day, windy day. It was not a mud south, it was a windy south. But there was, you know, aside from a couple mud water crossings, it was bone dry and super fast out there. In fact, it was fast from the gun. Looking at the forecast, it was calling for, you know, steady winds of 15, 16 miles an hour with gusts up to 40 miles an hour. And we were full on echelon within the first few miles. I was happy that I had put on a 44 ring instead of the stock 40 ring. There were parts when I was, you know, in the 44 creeping up hills, but then there was also plenty of parts, especially with the screaming tailwind, where I was nearly spun out in the 4410. Shout out to the crazy single speeders out there. There was a young man in a group with me for a good part of the day who was making do with one gear just fine, but I was happy to have 12. So the wind and the firepower at the front of the race blew it apart into small groups pretty quickly. And then we were in groups that, you know, would ebb and flow and grow and shrink throughout the day, you know, as people would crack or get a second wind, come back together. Bobby warned us at the start, hey, there's gonna be some train crossings, heads up. And sure enough, just like, you know, that famous Paris-Roubaix from back in the day, train stopped the group that had women's race leader Lauren DeCrescenzo in it, among others. She was not so happy. I was personally happy for a little time out, you know, a little pee break midway through the race, regroup, catch your breath, all part of the fun and games. I managed to thoroughly botch the mid-race water stop at the Perry, I believe the town is, at the 50-mile point. There was a table filled with jugs of water and scratch that I blew past as I came through.
Neutral water? Where's water? Where's water?
No. Where's water?
Anybody got neutral water?
Man, I got water.
Anybody got water? Hey, Tom.
There's water monsters down there.
Okay. Thank you, Crystal. On which side?
So went through the town like, hey, where's the water? Where's the water? Got to the end of the town and realized, oh, I needed to turn around and go all the way back.
Okay.
So did that, and in doing so, lost my buddies, lost my group.
Excuse me, pardon me.
Good job.
Was hammering back through town. Did not see a car coming through a stoplight. I assumed, you know, when you assume things, you make an ass of you and me. I assumed that it was a closed little circuit there in town, and you know, had to lock up my wheels. The car locked up its wheels, so sorry about that, folks in Perry.
Almost died.
So after chasing in vain like a fool, just dangling there in between a group ahead and a group behind, finally reason made its way through my thick skull. I sat up and waited for the friends coming up behind, and we rode together more or less as a group till the last little bits. Coming into a single track section where SRAM had a bunch of volunteers out. Thanks SRAM folks. The 100-mile and the 50-mile course had converged, and so there was folks from all the different groups in there. Everybody was very gracious. Again, that's something that Bobby had encouraged us to do ahead of time. It's like be loving and forgiving and encouraging of each other, and that was certainly my experience going through there. People were super nice.
Thanks very much, appreciate you.
Okay, let's talk the bike and the gear, the choices, what worked well, what didn't so work well, what I like, what I do not like. I really like this shake, for starters. Mint and chocolate chip, hitting the spot. So the Ventum GS1, I did a full review on this bike a bit ago. You can click that link, or I'll put the link in the video description. You know, it's got they stretched it out a centimeter. It's got clearance for 45 mil tires, and you can move the front axle with a flip chip in the fork, effectively increasing or decreasing the trail. I like the bike for a few reasons. You know, one is I can get my road geo pretty easily. Also, the post has a bit of flex. The fact that it's a D-shaped post means that even I can't get my saddle crooked because it stays steady. And then some of these D-posts have frustrating clamps. This one is not. There are two bolts, one that keeps the inner bolt in place and the other that tightens it down, so it's just super easy to work with. Another thing that I appreciated about working on this bike, as far as taking it down and packing it, it was just super easy to deal with SRAM force compared to dealing with Shimano Di2. I love Di2, I love the GRX 2x, but not having to deal with a battery or wires, just being able to like pull the seat post out, pull off the rear derailleur, take the chain apart at the magic link, and pop the battery off. Easy peasy, so very easy to travel with. The bike, similarly, you've got a standard stem. I did have to loosen the stem cap so I could rotate this under cap a bit just to get the bars where I want them to go, but night and day difference than a fully integrated bar stem that is becoming increasingly popular. It looks great, and once you've got the fit dialed, can often feel wonderful, but packing can be complicated, if not impossible, with a small bag. So a small thing, maybe not pertinent to everybody, but if you're traveling to race and you're packing it up, that's a good thing to know. The new Force is a refinement more than a full-on overhaul. The levers and hoods were trimmed just a bit. The front of the hood bit is a smaller circumference than further back here. And then they just kind of shave some bits off the top of the hood, and the lever is a bit smaller. It's still like, you know, I wear size large or extra large gloves. The reach is, when not dialed in, is about as far out as I'd want it. So for smaller hands, it's good that there still is a reach adjust, because like that's a stretch. Obviously it depends on the bar and like how the angle of the lever, but at full extension, that's a bit of a reach. Also shaved off a bit here, so when you're braking and or your pads are worn or the bike may need a bleed, it's going to be less likely to either hit your knuckles or hit the bar. So like small tweaks, but welcome tweaks. SRAM has taken grief for a couple of things that fall in the disposable category. One is they got rid of the plug-in satellite shifters in favor of the wireless battery-powered satellite shifters, which are cool that you can put them wherever and you don't have to deal with wires. The downside is you can't charge the battery. You can't put a new battery. They, after they die in a couple years, which is pretty long life, you just throw the thing out. So that's a bit of a bummer. The other one is the new chainring style. The bike came with the integrated spider ring that just bolts onto the crank arm. You can also get power meters where the meter and the ring is integrated as one piece. SRAM says they are doing this because it's stiffer and they can make it lighter, and also it's a pretty, as far as power meters go, on the more inexpensive side of things. The detractors say that's dumb, a chainring will wear out and then you got to throw out your power meter. I test a lot of bikes, so I haven't worn out a chainring in a very long time. Wear out chains, sure. Brake pads, sure. Chain rings, as long as you're taking care of your chain, they should last a while. My gripe with the integrated ring power meter, especially for one buy, is that like sometimes you might want to change the chain ring based on the course. As I said, this bike came with a 40, and I put on a 44, and I would probably leave that for most riding, but if you want to change your chain ring, that's a bit of an issue. One thing to note is you don't have to do the integrated ring meter. SRAM still sells a couple different cork meters where it's just the spider, and then you can bolt on the ring of your choice. So before you get your panties all up in a wad, realize you've got options. One, you don't have to buy the group at all, right? And two, if you are a loyal SRAM user and you want to have a separate chain ring, you can still do that. So deep breaths, people, deep breaths. Okay, what else we got here? Shout out to the Ventum folks for one, loaning me this lovely bike with a new group, and two, for Justin Diamond, the visual maestro who you may know from the Thereabouts Rafa film with Gus Morton and friends, was out doing photography and video this weekend, and he helped shoot me on this bike. So when you're seeing the beautiful images here and you're like, oh, that's a much higher quality than Ben normally does. That's why, it's not me, that's Justin behind the camera. So thanks for that, Justin. Relatedly, one thing I've very much appreciated and been humbled by as I start off on my own little venture here with the ride is the teamwork and collaboration from folks who I do not work directly with. I've worked a lot of different media titles over the years and appreciated working with dedicated videographers or photographers or writers or editors, and now that I'm putting this whole thing together by myself, I'm not putting the whole thing together by myself. I've got help from friends and sometimes strangers, whether it's like Avery Stoom, who was out there helping me shoot past times and giving me tips on how to edit the thing, or today was out there at the SRAM stop, not just handing me scratch chews, but like tearing it open. So that's humbling and appreciated, so thanks for the help, y'all. Putting all this together is a bit like riding in a peloton. A lot of people taking pulls, many hands, light work, or many legs, light work. In any event, it's appreciated. Pricing, that's a thing. I'm a spoiled brat. I test bikes, I don't pay for them, I borrow them, I ride them, I hand them back. Price is a tricky thing because everyone's situation is different. Some folks are dentists and lawyers, some folks are college kids or working restaurant jobs. So I can't just pass judgment and say this is a good price or this is a bad price. What I can do is contextualize one bike to the next or one brand to the next. Ventum is consumer direct, and that allows them to offer relatively inexpensive pricing on high-end bikes. So for instance, this GS1 frame set's $2,500. Compare that to the Envy Mog, which I tested a couple weeks back. The chassis there, $5 grand, so twice as much. Not exactly apples to apples, but still all in the same fruit section of the grocery store. Complete bikes with start at just under $4,000 with SRAM Rival and go up to just under 10K with a full SRAM red build and a power meter and, you know, super Gucci NV 3.4 AR wheels. So just looking at price, Ventum's quite competitive. Couple gripes. The Envy bar with the flat top combined with this particular stem doesn't leave enough room to put on a computer mount, so I've gone with this Silka, rather phallic looking mount that bolts onto the bottom of the stem. I need to get a integrated version from Envy so it's like nice and tidy. It's just a tiny thing, but just, you know, something to be aware of if you're considering either this bike or this particular cockpit. I wish, speaking of the Garmin, I wish the Garmin map would stay where you set it. A few times today I would back out a little bit trying to see not just what the next turn was, but what the next few turns were, and just trying to get a read on what the wind situation was and where I should put myself in relation to the group. And it would keep going, like when a turn would come up, it would default to the super zoomed in setting. And when you're like rattling along, trying to thumb over or index finger over to the map page and then zoom out, maybe not the safest thing, and it's also just kind of an annoying thing. But like, just why can't you stay where I want you to be? Minor gripe, absolutely first world stretchy pants bike nerd problems, but something I'd like to see improved on the Garmin. Something I'd like to see improved on the SRAM Force related to the Garmin is putting some buttons the way we have on Shimano now, both the latest Dura-Ace up top and the JRX on the inside, so you can scroll through your computer buttons while keeping your hands on the shifters. Brakes were a little warbly today. You can chalk that up to some red clay dust on the rotors. Power was fine, modulation was fine, including when I locked it up, sliding towards a car at speed going through Perry. Little bits that I'm continue to dig. Shimano XT pedals will last forever. I don't think I've ever done a lick of maintenance on these things in years and years and years. The Arundel cages are solid, which is what you want. I did a little thing on Instagram asking folks for their take on what cages they like the best. These guys got a lot of votes. The OG King cages, the titanium cages out of Durango, got a lot. Silka got a few. The Specialized second tier cages, the plastic ones, not the Gucci expensive carbon ones, but the plastic ones got a lot of praise. It's a simple thing, but it can be a major thing when you don't have a water bottle in a long race. Similarly, the podium bottles with these little caps, small thing, but like, I'd rather have my drink unsoiled by the red clay, thank you very much. That's a nice little thing that I appreciate for gravel races. I ran the Usui pack, the Swedish camelback version, super minimalist. I was obsessing as amateur bike racer dorks do last night. Do I bring the Usui pack and the bottles? That's a lot of weight, and I'm already heavy, and I'm already gonna get dropped by the fast kids, or do I go lighter and then need to stop? So I went for this tweener situation. I filled the pack most of the way. I filled one bottle, I left another bottle empty, which in retrospect was a dumb thing. You know, all part of the gamble, right? You try to optimize and you overthink things. And then when I was going through Perry, if I had filled this up, I wouldn't have needed to stop and thereby drop myself from the group. So in retrospect, it was a laughable forehead slapper, but like tire choices the night before or the week before, it's just a fun thing to think about. Shake up the dice, roll them, play those where they lay. On the plus side, Murphy's Law was in effect. I wore my trusty gravel britches, Castelli Unlimited, which have, you know, packs on the sides and then pockets on the back where I run the Dynaplug and a cartridge, and Murphy's Law, since I had those things, did not need them. I hit a number of rocks good and proper, causing some terrible sounds to emit from under the bike, but no flats, no whammies. I also like having pockets on the sides. I'll use the left as a dedicated trash pocket, and then putting a secondary GoPro in the other side. So I'll put links to all the stuff I used down in the description below. As always, hit me up with questions and comments. I certainly appreciate the dialogue back and forth. It was great to see many of you here in Stillwater this weekend. Appreciate the support in person. And I very much appreciate the support and stoke of Bobby Wintle. It's always inspiring to see the man in action and how he fires up so many of us. It's a ridiculous activity in so many ways to put on stretchy pants and ride a bicycle around, but for so many of us, it is such an important and uplifting part of our lives. Let's all do our part to add a little Bobby Wintle to our lives and pass that stoke on down the road. So this is me here in a ditch in Stillwater, Oklahoma, thanking you for watching, thanking you for subscribing, and asking you, as always, to enjoy the ride. And we out.